Welcome to the I Fired My Boss Franchise Podcast. My name's Dan Claps, founder and CEO of Franchise Playbook, a franchisor platform where we create, own, and operate dynamic franchise brands in the mobile services space. And my life's goal is to help people just like you fire their boss and become a business owner.
And I'm Christian Dadulak, top franchise consultant and co-founder of Real Franchising, a leading franchise consulting firm. And together, we're on a mission to help people fire their boss, hire themselves, and live the American dream through franchise ownership.
Welcome to another episode of the I Fired My Boss podcast with my friend and co-host Christian Dadulak. What's going on, Christian?
Good, man. Just getting all set up after the move. For those of you that are maybe watching on YouTube and you see my boring white wall background, it's because I just moved. Don't have everything set up yet, so you just have to bear with me for this episode. But other than that, all good, man. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona now, super pumped and excited to be here and excited to chat about our subject for today.
You do kind of look like you're in either like a really boring office or like an insane asylum.
A little bit of both.
You're just kind of like in this little room. It doesn't look like a fun
it's a
room.
Padded wall. Yeah.
Yeah, padded
wall. It's boring right now. We'll make it look good. We'll make it look like a full-on podcast studio, but it'll take a second to get there, I'm sure.
I'm going through the same thing. I'm floating around my building because I'm in the middle. I just got a new office, for myself here in Florida, but they're just finishing up getting me in there, which I feel bad because I'm working in like a common area and I'm very loud, so I feel bad for my fellow building mates. But all right, well, let's jump in. We were chatting for 20 minutes. We probably should have just recorded this. We're going to do a quick 10-minute episode on what we were just talking about, which is how to do a competitive analysis of really the landscape of your market when you're down to kind of knowing which industry you want to be in, but what does that industry look like? Now, one of the things that I want to be super candid about that I think people don't really think about is before you do the competitive analysis, one thing to keep in mind is every business is always going to have competition no matter what. It's just part of business. So don't get too hung up on it, because one of the things you got to think about is, if I was looking at a lash business to do, eyelash blowouts, and I looked at how many franchise locations are there in that market. Okay, there's 5 franchise, there's Lash Lounge, there's Deca Lash, there's whatever else. Okay, there's 5. I think there's enough market for me. Well, you don't know about the 4 or 5 other franchise brands where there might be multi-unit development agreements where they are planning to come there. They've already signed territory, and that franchise is just not yet open. Unfortunately, there's no way to have that data. So just keep in mind, market analysis is really only going to be able to show you what's in your market now, not overall.
Yeah, that's a great point, but it's still something that needs to be done, and it's messy, and it's not perfect, and it's just not going to be perfect. But it's critical to get done to evaluate what the local competition is going to look like at the end of the day, because I'm all about, and what I coach my candidates about, is how to make sure that they're going in with their eyes wide open. I mean, obviously, I want to help them find the right franchise opportunity, but I'd rather someone not move forward if it's not the right fit for them. And so, something that we are big on, and something that we coach on throughout the process, and obviously we can't do the work for them. They have to do their own due diligence, but we can give them best practices for getting some of this information. And a key way to evaluate a franchise offering is, like you said, looking at the competitive landscape in the local market. And we can't know what's going to be there in the future, but what exists today? What does the competitive landscape look like as things stand today? Because it could be an amazing brand. It could be an amazing opportunity. It could fit you in terms of skill, interest level, passions, goals, etc. But if your local market doesn't make sense because the competitive landscape doesn't make sense, then maybe it's not a good fit, and maybe it's time to look at something else. So, I mean, Dan, what are some things that, and I don't know how much you guys coach on this in your process, but I mean, what are some things you go over with candidates, or what are some key things that you tell them to look for, either as a way to reassure them that, hey, no, the competitive landscape isn't as bad as you might think it is, because restoration can be very competitive, or what are some things you say, hey, yeah, if this is what your local competition looks like, hey, maybe this is something that, market we might want to avoid. I mean, I don't know if that ever happens, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just having every market's a little bit different. I was just this yesterday morning. I was at a brunch with a husband and wife that are buying Voda in the southwest of Florida, like the Naples type area, and we were talking about excuse me, not Naples. I'm not going to say Cape Cod. I'm used to the Northeast. Cape Coral, yes, Cape
Yep.
Coral area, and we were talking about that in Florida. Just the bar is lower than some other areas in all types of service. This kind of personal, but I was just talking about, like, if you go to a really nice restaurant here, expect the service to be the same as New York. For a medium restaurant, if you go to a medium restaurant, just expect to wait like way longer. No insults to anyone listening that's from Florida. It's just a little bit different of a pace, and there's pros and cons to anywhere. But we were talking about that in that market, and since it's such a crowded market, they feel like the bar is so low. And the way that we had encouraged them to look at that is, call your competitors. Go act like you're a restoration in need of restoration, like a secret shopper, and see how fast they answer, see how polite they are. And that's for restoration, for example. But I would go and I would take a gym class at your local area, go eat the food at the local restaurant, whatever your industry you're looking at. Go secret shop competitors is the number one way to learn, really, in my opinion.
I think that's completely true. I think the way that I coach my clients is, it's like a funnel process, or almost just start with the easy stuff that you can do first and then narrow down to the secret shopping of it. Like some basic things you can do right out of the gate is a Google search restoration businesses in my area, or like my pipe burst or whatever, like things that, someone might type into Google if they needed help or something like that, or just Google local restoration companies and see what the reviews are, see what your competitors' clients are saying about them. Maybe if there's 5 or 10 businesses in my area that all have 5,000 5-star reviews, maybe that gives me some pause. Now, I don't think that should necessarily mean you don't do it, because it depends on, maybe there's, like you said, Dan, maybe there's a way to step up the way that the customer experience is delivered, but you don't really know until you do some of that work. But on a preliminary basis, I mean, what does the average competitor in my market, what does their online presence look like? What are people saying? What are their competitors saying? What are the good things they're saying? What are the bad things they're saying that can be improved? And does the franchise that I'm thinking about buying into lend itself to my being able to solve that problem and deliver a better customer experience? And so basic Google search, go through their social media. Do they have a good social media presence? How often are they posting? Are people engaging? How long have they been around? How many followers do they have? These are key things. I mean, like there's especially in like the beauty type industries, like a lash business or a mobile tanning or whatever the case is, sugaring, hair removal. I want to know. I mean, I would expect those brands, because they're more Instagrammable type businesses, I would want the corporate location and their franchisees. I would want to see that my own franchisees that are in the system or the corporate location have good brand presences. But I also want to make sure that, how much other local competition is there that have similar strong online presences. And so, so Google search, social media, website experience, look at their website. Is it easy to follow? Does it get the right information? Does it pop out? Does it let you know quickly what they do? Is the journey and the navigation easy? All basic things you can do online. And I think all of that should come before you do what you said, Dan, which is secret shopping. But just going a little bit more granular, Dan, I mean, what do you think are some key best business practices to properly secret shopping? And what are some of the key things that you would say to look for?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can go on Google and look for, we're talking about, secret shopping, the business offering, right? The service, right? And so, when I think about, like, if I was looking at the lead generation market, I would go and I would look at, like, what's the Google guaranteed market look like, which is a whole way of doing lead generation that a lot of people are not aware of in home service. Like, how is that? How's that process looking? Are there a bunch of competitors there? I'm going to look at, if I type into Google, it's challenging. The challenge that I have is, it really depends on your market. Like, I'll give you an example. In restoration, let me ask you a question. How many pizza places do you see in your town, whatever town you're in at any time? There's a lot of pizza places.
A ton.
It's a $25 billion industry. And so there needs to be a lot of pizza places to serve the giant demand of people that want pizza. Restoration is a $300 billion industry, right? And so, of course, there's a lot of restoration companies. I'm using that as an example. You really need to understand the size of the market as well to then make a comparison of how many, if I was in the, very specific niche of grooming, border collies that, live in a town, like there's room for one, right? If any, right? Like if I'm talking about, doing people's hair, there's a lot more room. And so, I found Ibis World as an amazing place to look. Like, I look at Ibis World at data and try to make decisions off of that. I encourage people to check out Ibis World, even if you got to pay. If you're going to buy a franchise and spend, $200,000 or whatever, why not spend $1,000 on the Ibis World report on that specific industry?
I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, like you said, the more you niche down, the fewer potential prospects, fewer competition, but also less demand. So things to keep in mind for sure. So, well, I know that we're kind of bumping up against time here. Shorter episode here today, but hopefully those are some basic key ideas on competitive and market analysis. Maybe we can do a part 2 where we dive in a little bit deeper and get even more granular on how to properly do that and that sort of thing. But in any case, thanks everyone for hopping on to another episode of the I Fired My Boss Franchise Podcast. As always, leave us a review, share us with friends, and we'll see you on the next episode.
You're f***ing fired.
If you want to say those words to your boss, make sure you head on over to ifiredmybosspodcast.com and fill out the form to schedule a no-cost consultation. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend who might also want to fire their boss.